Righty ho, here we go. Appraisal 2018. So this sort of overview, you'll need 4 documents that I will reference. So the first one is the one on screen at the moment. It's the Teaching Staff Appraisal Procedure. The second one you'll need to be familiar with is the Pick Your Own Appraisal Pathway. The fourth one is the Teacher Appraisal 28 Plan and Summary Document. And the last one we'll have a quick look at is the Appraisal Map and Setup for 2018. So let's go back to the first one, Teaching Appraisal Procedure. So this is the official overview of what guides appraisal for this year. All of the content that is put in here is like an overview that was all developed at retreat. If you remember, we did a number of exercises where you identified what you thought appraisal should look like, and so those have all been pulled out and included in here, and they've also defined really clearly what appraisal is characterized when the appraisee and the appraiser are working together. So I'm not going to go through all of this, but that is just there for your reference, and it's available at any stage. You can just link straight to it through the school website. Okay. The second document we're going to go over is the Pick Your Own Appraisal Pathway. So those of you who are at retreat will be familiar with this. So the only change since retreat, or there's a couple of changes. One thing is that the standards for the teaching profession on retreat, they would have been kind of second in line, but I've moved them and put our vision and ngā uraratanga in front of them, if you like, because I believe they should have a higher priority in our practice than the standards for the teaching profession. The next addition is this column here, the Teaching as Inquiry Themes. So I just put that in there as well, just so that we can see a clear link between the appraisal and our ongoing inquiries. And they can be either your ongoing classroom inquiry with your learners, which could be focused on reading, writing, maths, could be a cultural focus or a well-being focus. It could be a focus on accelerating your learners. It could be a focus on extending some of your ATs or aboves and so forth. Or it could be the inquiry that is the focus of your PLD stream. So when we go through this year's appraisal, I'm going to ask you to redo this, but get you to identify any box that you think is relevant. So at retreat, when we had a go at it, I just asked you to tick one box in each column, but for the purposes of your real and actual appraisal, just tick any boxes that are relevant or that you would like to follow up through your discussion when you set up your appraisal. Okay, the next one, next documentation is the Teacher Appraisal 2018. So this is where we're going to document what your appraisal looks like, and also at the end of the year, this is going to be the document that includes a summary of how the appraisal has gone. This is really important. This is an important document. It's a document that we didn't previously have in the process. It was picked up by Aero that we didn't have it. We already knew we didn't have it, so this was presented to Aero as well as part of the revamp of the appraisal process. So this now includes all of the elements that we should have in order to have a really robust appraisal system. So let's just go through it nice and quickly so you can understand what needs to be done. So when you construct this, the plan is developed with a leadership team member, and we'll talk about who that is in a minute, and then the rest of it is co-constructed with your appraiser. Okay, so I'll outline that a little bit more. So the first bit is really obvious. It's just who it is that this plan applies to. So that can be populated at any stage actually, and having a link to your blog in there would be, or wherever you keep your reflective evidence of your practice would be really key to put in there. So when you get down to the appraisal plan, you do this with a leadership member. First of all, it references your picker path. So from your picker path, you would have ticked various boxes or not, and that should identify strengths and weaknesses. And so there's just a opportunity there for that to be captured in a little narrative paragraph about what it is that your picker path shows. From that process, you should identify a couple of areas that you need to work on and further develop, and those will form the basis of your goals. So you and your leadership member who you're working with will set those goals up. So there'll be a couple of them there, and the expected outcomes are, so if you're successful with your goal by the end of the year, what are going to be some measures or some indicators that we can use to look back on the year and see how successful you've been. Okay, so just all we need there is a goal and 3 or 4 expected outcomes or indicators, and then with those indicators, let's link them to the standards so that we can have a clear look at which of the standards for the teaching profession you are meeting simply by working through those goals throughout the year. Okay, and that's really important that we're constantly linking to those standards, because the purpose of this whole appraisal document is to show how you are meeting those standards, which needs to be done every year for every standard. So developing the goals, the indicators, and making the links to the standards. Then clarifying exactly who it is who's going to be your appraiser, and again the leadership member will talk you through who you think it should be, balanced against the kind of skills the appraiser needs to be. So that will be documented there. Then you and your leadership team member will again refer back to your picker path, pick your own appraisal pathway, and they will you together will plan what your year looks like. So normally we're a little bit late, as you know. Term 1 would be all about setting it up and creating your plan. Term 2 and 3 about those ongoing acts and interactions between the appraiser and the appraisee, and the meetings, the dialogue, the observations, etc. So how often are they going to happen? Just needs to be documented in there, and the follow-up, and what evidence are you going to be collecting, and how regular do you agree that should be. So that's all put in there. And then term 4, you're just wrapping all that up and having your formal end of year meeting. So once that's clarified, then what you're doing is everyone's agreeing to that. So the appraiser obviously needs to agree to be the appraiser, and they agree to do everything that's identified in the plan. The appraisee signs it off to agree, and the leadership team member who helped establish it signs it off as well. So that's all that needs to be done right now. Okay, so that's the setup. But towards the end of the year, in term 4, then what we need to do is complete a summary report. And essentially, again, the purpose of the summary report is to, 1, clearly show what you have done in terms of the year, reference the evidence that supports what you have done, links it to the standards, and the whole purpose of that is that so the appraiser can make a call, and this is further down, make a call here that yes, the teacher has met the standards of the teaching profession, or they haven't. Okay, and that's one thing that we need to do, which we haven't been doing. The other element here is that right at the very top in the details, you would have identified if you had any professional responsibilities. So if you're leading a curriculum area, you're an AP or you're a DP, or you have any particular responsibility, then we're also going to just check in here and see how you've met those responsibilities. Identify next steps, areas for future development. That's pretty clear. And then essentially any sort of closing comments, and it gets signed off at the end of the year. And then as a principal, I will look at all of these because I, of course, won't necessarily be the appraiser. And I will go through and check them. And what that does for me is that gives me the evidence that this teacher has been through a robust appraisal process. And when you come to me and ask me to sign off your certification to renew your teacher certificate and registration, I can do that without a worry because I know there's been a process where you've clearly been assessed against the standards for the teaching profession. And lastly, the last document is the appraisal setup. So you can see from here who is going to help you set up your appraisal, but that doesn't mean they're your appraiser. So all they're going to do is, so Troy, for instance, is going to work with Bianca, Nicole, and Brenda and set up their appraisal. And then through that process, as we know, those teachers will identify who their appraiser will be. Okay, that's us done.